different things like that. And so for our program, in order to care for the wild animals that we care for, we are licensed by the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and the United States Department of Agriculture. And so this allows us to do our rehab as well as our education that we do. Here today, after we've just kind of done all of our yearly end reports, we are now able to offer over 1,200 programs a year, which is a record for us. So 1,200, which is really exciting. So to start off, I will bring out one of my favorite owls for you guys. So give me just 1 second, and I will have him here for you. Awesome. So let me see if I can fix the lights. Okay. So this is, if you guys can see him, a barn owl. These guys are the most common owl in the world. They are found on every single continent except for Antarctica. And this guy, you might occasionally hear throughout the presentation, if he vocalizes at all, he actually has the nickname Banshee Owl. This is because these birds, as opposed to what you would normally think, they don't actually all hoot. The only owl in North America that actually hoots is the great horned owl. And so this one has the nickname Banshee because he really kind of sounds like nails on a chalkboard. And because of that, you have this big white owl flying at night, making a screeching sound. If you had something like a barn or a human structure, and you didn't know that this was an owl flying into your barn or a place, you might think that you have a haunted place. These guys are some of the origins of different types of ghost stories around the world. But barn owls, I like to kind of think of as the perfect owl. These are the types of owls that have the best hearing and the most silent flight. And so you'll notice when he looks at the camera that he has a very heart-shaped face. And those feathers around his face are very stiff. And so they act as a satellite dish to catch and funnel sound. And so this bird can hear very well. He can hear a mouse chewing from about 25 to 30 feet away or under 3 feet of snow. It allows him to do something called triangulation, where he can pinpoint exactly where that mouse might be in kind of a 3D space. The other big thing that allows them to have that incredible hearing is the placement of their ears. Most owls, not all of them, have what are called asymmetrical ears. So they'll have one ear up high and a little bit forward on their head, and another that's down low and a little bit backwards on their head. And that is part of what allows them to see or hear how far forward something might be in relation to them. The other big thing that makes the barn owl extremely unique is how silent these birds fly. While the other owls do have some amount of silent flight, not all of them are as good as the barn owl. On the outer edge of his primary feathers, they have a kind of eyelash type structure called flutings, and they also, the rest of the feathers on their body are extremely soft. And so the soft feathers and those flutings on the edges of their feathers break up the sound while they fly. So if you ever were to hear an owl flap, sometimes you can even hear birds flapping on video, which is why we do that. You can't hear anything when they fly. And so I like to kind of call these guys assassins of the night or ninjas of the night. They can hear their prey, they know exactly where they're going, and they swoop down and they sneak up on their prey without their prey ever knowing, because of how incredible their hearing and their flight is, which is their main way of catching their prey. But barn owls specifically actually have a huge conservation issue going on. And while it affects all owls and many other species, barn owls seem to be one of the most prone to what is happening. The biggest threat to barn owls is the use of mouse and rat poison, Rodenticide. And so when we use it, it doesn't work right away. These birds, or the animal that eats it, the mouse, can live for 5 to 7 days after ingesting that poison, and then can wander the environment. And for a barn owl, this guy could eat over 1,000 mice in a year. It's one of his primary diet sources, leaving him to be one of the most prone, whereas other owls, like a great horned owl, or even some of the smaller guys, are sometimes going after different prey items that are not quite affected by the mouse and rat poison that are found in our homes. This particular barn owl, his name is Caliban, like from Shakespeare, and he was raised in captivity specifically to do what he's doing, education. And so this guy is very comfortable with us, and that's why he vocalizes and he looks around. He's very curious about his environment, and because I'm talking and he was raised by people, he thinks that he has to talk all the time as well. So that's all I've got for barn owls to start. So give me just a second, and I will get out our next owl. Awesome. Hopefully you guys got to hear his fun little sound that he made. Normally when we bring this owl out, he makes this cute little twittering sound, and he rarely does his actual hoot. So it's pretty cool that you guys got to hear this guy hoot today. And as you guys heard earlier, because he is hooting, that means that he's a great horned owl. So this is, for Colorado, the largest species of owl that we have here. If you go to other places in North America, there are other larger species of owls. And occasionally, if we have a snowy owl come down here into Colorado, they can be bigger, but we don't truly consider them a native yet, because usually the ones that are coming as far south down here are adventuring or not here for permanent ways. And so great horned owls are our largest big owl here in Colorado. Now these guys are very big, and because of that, they have a very diverse prey source, whereas some of those smaller owls are a little bit more restricted to small mammals and small reptiles. These guys, the great horned owls, can take down commonly rabbits or prairie dogs, but the most incredible thing that these guys like to take down that is not very well known for the great horned owl is skunks. Owls actually do not have a sense of smell. Most birds do not. You do have a rare case or two, like a turkey vulture or some parrots or water birds, but most birds don't actually have a sense of smell. And so because of that, the great horned owl, being as large as he is with his very big, powerful feet, you can see in comparison to mine, he has pretty large feet. That are very powerful. In each of those feet, he has 500 pounds per square inch that he is able to grab and grip with, which is how he gets his prey. And so by hunting at dawn and dusk and sometimes into the night, these guys often see skunks and are easily able to prey upon those. Now, the other thing that we see commonly, especially with great horned owls, because these guys are the largest and we see them the most frequently because of their size, is, especially as we're getting into breeding season, accidental kidnapping, essentially, of baby owls. People will see these guys on the ground and think that they're injured, when in reality, it's just a bird learning how to fly. And if you do see a baby bird on the ground and say it's not ready to be out of the nest, it doesn't have those flight feathers yet, it is perfectly okay to pick those baby birds up and put them back into the nest. And for great horned owl cases, usually the babies will spend a day or two hanging around on the ground or jumping into bushes, and the parents will still be around to take care of their young. And it just takes those guys a couple days to figure out how their wings really work. So if you do see an owl or any injured animal that you think might have a problem, feel free to contact an organization similar to us. We are based out of Sedalia, Colorado, and Florence, Colorado. Our rehab facility, though, is in Sedalia. And so you can contact us, you can contact Colorado Parks and Wildlife, or other similar organizations in order to really kind of figure out if that animal's really hurt or if it's just learning how to fly or has something else going on. Now, great horned owls are named great horned because of these cool feathers that are at the top of their head, but they're not actually his ears. These feather tufts, we call them plumicorns, and what the great horned owl primarily uses these for, what people think, is communication and camouflage. So when these birds are really comfortable, they might put their plumicorns up and just kind of hang out, whereas if they're startled, they might flatten those feathers against their head and change how they're kind of showing their behavior to other owls. But it also helps to break up their silhouette. He sees his reflection in my computer. Break up their silhouette in the trees, and some people think to make them look cat-like. So if other prey animals or predator animals are less likely to annoy them because they look like a big cat in the tree. Now, this bird here, his name is Archimedes, and he was found in Texas when his nest had been blown down. And in this situation, the parents really did abandon the nest, and these babies were not ready to be out on their own. And so in this situation, somebody did the right thing and brought him and his siblings to a rehab facility in Texas, where he would hopefully be raised and released to the wild. And this particular facility has really big sliding doors that they let the birds choose to leave when they are ready. And while his siblings left, this bird never did. And they pretty quickly realized that this bird became what's called a food imprint. Sometime during his process, he realized that people give him food all the time, and it's absolutely fantastic and great. So why would he go work outside in the wild? And because of that, that makes this guy non-releasable. And so he will live the rest of his life in captivity with us, and he's about 4 years old now. And so give me 1 second. I have one more bird for you guys this afternoon, or evening, I guess. And this one is not a native. So he's a special surprise for you guys. And he is the second largest owl in the world. So he's pretty cool. Awesome. So this is the last owl I have for you guys today, and this is called a Eurasian Eagle Owl. These guys are the second largest species of owl in the world, and the largest species of owl in the world is actually called the Blakiston's fishing owl. Now, the Eurasian Eagle Owl is one of the owls that has a pretty large range. It's not as expansive as the barn owl, who was found on every single continent, but this bird ranges across almost the entirety of Europe and Asia. He has a very big range in those areas, and similar to our great horned owl, he is found in a variety of different habitats. Great horned owls here in Colorado are frequently found almost anywhere, up in the mountains, out in the plains, in your backyard, and the Eurasian Eagle Owl is pretty similar. These guys do tend to spend a little bit more time in mountainous regions or more forested areas, but have been seen in European cities nesting just the same as our great horned owls do. And as you can see, this guy looks a lot like a great horned owl. And so he is one of the direct cousins to the great horned owl, just across the pond. This guy will go after small rodents as well as rabbits and different things, very, very similar to the great horned owl. But being almost twice the size as some great horned owls, he is definitely much stronger and can take down things as large as small dogs. And the other amazing thing about owls is their phenomenal camouflage. And so you'll see if he were standing against a tree, I guess our ceiling works pretty well. He has incredible camouflage to blend in, so that way other things don't really mess with him during the day. And the other incredible thing about owls is their giant eyes. And this guy is one of the best to show that off because he has huge eyes. The owl's eyes are so big that they actually touch each other in the back of their skull. And they're not round like our eyes are, they're actually shaped like a light bulb. And so you're kind of looking at the small part of the light bulb while the big part is in the back of their head. And what this allows for, as most owls have either a nocturnal or a dawn and dusk type of lifestyle, the eye shape and size allows for more rod cells in order for them to be able to see in those low light conditions. And so because of that, their eyes taking up that much space actually does not allow for these guys to have really big brains. These guys are what we call instinctual primitive predators. And so if they were to try and solve a puzzle, they wouldn't actually be that great at it. He's more so relying on that hearing and his silent flight to just sneak up to his prey item, whereas something like a hawk or a falcon sees that same prey item and has to really think about if they would be able to catch that fast enough. Whereas this guy, he's just sneaking right up to it. So they have no idea usually that he is approaching. And so this bird in particular, he used to be part of an abatement program, so something to scare birds off of buildings, landfills, different places like that. And then he was given to our organization for education. So he was raised in captivity and is also a human imprint, but originally was supposed to have a different job. Awesome. I think, let me see if I can figure out the questions portion, or are we doing that after? Sorry.
Are you okay just staying on and we'll do them all at the end?
Yeah, awesome. That works.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Well, but specifically, let's talk about some of these. The horned owl that you brought out, is it a juvenile?
No.
No. Okay.
So when that happens, the human imprint and the food begging call that he is doing, that comes from what gets messed up in their brain. That's what makes him non-releasable. And so because he sees himself essentially as a person, or that we are supposed to give him food all the time, he makes that call to kind of perpetually say, hey, feed me all the time. And it's also similar to kind of talking at the same time. So the barn owl was also kind of making similar types of calls occasionally, just because that's how their brain works. They're not wild brained anymore, so they can't really figure out how to be a normal owl.
It did look kind of smaller than some great horned owls that I guess we've seen in other.
He is tiny. So compared to many of our great horned owls, he is like half the size. And so the interesting thing about owls is, or birds in general, is they grow up very quickly. So by the end of the couple of months that they're in the nest, those birds are full size. They will never really get any bigger, even years later. Their plumage might change, their feather color might change. For owls, not so much typically, but like a hawk, they definitely have juvenile plumage versus adult plumage. Where are we going? Sometimes they just find a place where they want to go. And they have to readjust. So he's being 4 years old. He would have been full size at about 8 to 12 weeks, somewhere in between that period. And so he's just a really tiny owl.
All right, I'm going to save the rest of the questions for the end. You ready to turn it over to Jackie? You good, Sky? Turning it over to Jackie?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that, and then stay on and we'll ask you questions later.
Awesome, perfect.
Okay, thank you. Jackie, I'm going to start sharing your slides.
All right. I'm on.
There you go.
Okay. I'm Jackie Sanderson, and I'm with Douglas County Open Space. And so that's the government organization that owns the open space properties that a lot of you hike on and go out and do some of the birding and enjoy trails and our open space properties. And we're really happy to have Douglas Land Conservancy hold conservation easements on most of these properties that the county owns. So it's a great partnership, and we enjoy partnering with them to do hikes and do different kinds of programs for our volunteers and also for the public too. So this is one of those programs. Normally we would be in a building and we would all be watching the live owls, and afterwards we'd go for a hike and a night hike with a full moon out and see how many, see if we can hear some owls out there, potentially see some, otherwise just enjoy a nice moonlight hike. So we're going to try to work that into this winter too and get some of that going. But we're going to talk about Douglas County owls, some of the most common ones that you would see around here, and where you might potentially see them on open space properties. Maybe you won't see them, maybe you'll just hear them, just to know where they are and what kind of habitats we're preserving for the lives of these owls. Okay, go ahead, Amy. Amy's operating the scenery here. Okay, this is a map of Douglas County, and the light brown parcels that you can see that are, they have a border of red, and those are properties. If they're brown with a border of red, they're owned by Douglas County, and if they're yellow and lined with red, those are some of our conservation easements that the county holds. The county holds conservation easements, say on Cherokee Ranch and JA Ranch. And we did hold the conservation easement on the Greenland Ranch, but now it's held by Colorado Cattlemen's Agricultural Land Trust. But you can see where a lot of these preserved areas are in the county, as well as on the left-hand side, that light green is all national forest, and the darker green parcels are the state parks. So that'd be Chatfield State Park and Roxborough State Park and Castlewood Canyon State Park over there on the right. So you can see that we've tried to do a really good job of preserving these properties for animal habitats. And a lot of you live in subdivisions where some of the trees have grown up, and hopefully there's still some nesting cavities in some of those trees as they're getting older and possibly dying. That's one reason to, if possible, keep those dead and dying trees for nesting cavities, especially for some of the smaller owls that we're going to be talking about here too. Douglas County open space properties you might be aware of, starting from the upper left, would be the Sharptail Ridge and Nelson open space, which are connected with the Sharptail Trail. We have DuPont open space, where we'll have our bird count on Memorial Day. Dawson Butte, a lot of you are familiar with that. That's a popular hiking trail. Sandstone Ranch, one of our newer open space properties, Spruce Mountain. And we'll talk about some of these as we go along, but this, if we need to refer back, if there are questions, we can look at these properties later, but we'll be talking about these properties and where owls have been seen on the properties, or depending on their habitat, where they could be seen. Okay, next screen. Okay, the Burrowing Owl. That's one that a lot of people don't realize, that we have owls that are out in the daytime. They're diurnal. They hunt for, they love grasshoppers, possibly small rodents. And they're usually in grasses. They could be in tall grasses or in short grasses. And sometimes too, you'll see them up on fences. They will hunt from a fence. They might be up on a fence post. And the habitat that they like kind of sandy soil. They will be, they can make their own burrows if necessary. If the sand is really lightweight and they can dig in that. Otherwise, they really like an abandoned prairie dog hole that is a good size for them to get into. It's very tidy. They can get in and out of it. It's not like the loose sand that might kind of come in. So around an abandoned prairie dog hole would be a good place to look for them. I've seen them along roadsides, right at intersections. And also I've seen them in Brazil. So there are other places in the world that do have these burrowing owls. I thought they were mostly attracted to prairie dog colonies, but they have a much wider range than that. And okay, I think we can go to the next screen and talk about that. And if there are any questions, we can ask those a little bit later on. This picture was taken at Hidden Mesa. Oh, some of our properties. Hidden Mesa has prairie dog colonies and some abandoned colonies. And also the other two properties would be the Hungry Horse property, which is north of Hidden Mesa, closer to Parker along the Cherry Creek Trail. And also at where the dog park is at Glendale Open Space up on top, there's some prairie dog holes there. Some are active and some of them are not active. So possibly they could be housing the burrowing owl. Okay, the barn owl. We got a chance to see a really nice looking barn owl this evening. Barn owls are located pretty widely around the world. I have seen them in other countries. And they, even though they are widespread, their populations have kind of dwindled around this part of Colorado, especially because their main source of food is small rodents, meaning mice, maybe little rats, but kind of on the small side. If people are having a problem with mice and rats in their barns, a lot of times they do put rodenticides in their barns. And also people are taking, in some cases, a little bit better care of their barns. So they're stopping all of the holes in the windows, and it's not as accessible for the barn owls to fly in. And they need the protection of some overhangs, some wood. They need to get away from predators. Their predators could be raccoons, and they need to get away from them. So they need a place to roost. Sometimes they will go into haystacks, and they can burrow a little bit into the haystacks for shelter. But when they hunt, they like nice wide open places. So this is a picture of Sandstone Ranch. If we were to keep, the windows open a little bit more, they would probably be roosting in there. They'd come out and hunt when it gets dark, and they hunt kind of lowly along the grasses. And they're, as I mentioned before, their prey is pretty much the small mammals. And we have a little one in the picture right down there on the right. So, okay, the next one, please. Oh, they can also roost up in the cliffs, like the cliffs were up in the background there. They can roost there and also have their young in those places too. Okay, the saw-whet owl. And I know sometimes nature's educators will bring a saw-whet owl too. This is quite a small owl. And I've seen them in lots of habitats in Douglas County in our open space properties. The picture of this one taken up on the left was a picture that was sent to me from Highlands Ranch, and it was a flicker box. So flickers are a type of a woodpecker, and woodpeckers will make the holes for themselves actually to get insects. But in doing so, they will also create these cavities that can be used by owls and several other birds that rely on nesting cavities made by woodpeckers. So, you know, it's possible for people to make nesting boxes that could accommodate not just, you know, not just bluebirds or the flickers, but can accommodate a lot of other cavity nesting birds too. Saw-whet owls, I've seen them at Roxborough State Park, actually in the Gamble Oak. So this picture on the right here is Spruce Mountain open space. And looking on the left-hand side of that picture, you can see some of the larger oaks in the background. They do like that kind of protection from the bigger oaks to be able to get in there so that they're not easily taken by, let's say in the daytime, by even a great horned owl. There's they also like conifer trees and forests with conifer trees. A lot of times we do the forest mitigation, and that opens forests up for other bigger birds to fly through and bigger animals to get through. But for a saw-whet owl, they like the extra protection of trees that are close together, that have a lot of branches that they can roost in and not be taken out by other birds harassing them, or bigger birds that might want to eat them. And let's see, yeah, saw-whet. Oh, the other place I've seen them also is along Plum Creek, and they do like juniper trees. And last year, we were really fortunate to have another small owl about the size, just maybe a tiny bit bigger than the saw-whet owl. And it was a Boreal Owl that came in, which you'd normally find at the elevation of about 10,000 feet-ish, right around there. And this Boreal Owl was seen by one of our volunteers, and it was close to Plum Creek, and it was in a juniper tree. Well, we went out there to look, and not very far away from this Boreal Owl was a saw-whet owl. And I found out that that can be pretty common. The two of them kind of have overlapping ranges, and I was just surprised to see that they both liked similar habitats, even though the Boreal Owl was out of its range and down low. It was able to be there with a saw-whet owl. Both of those birds need to be careful because the great horned owl will take them out. So something to be aware of there. DuPont open space is a good place to look for them. Well, you never really know when you're going to see them, but that houses them, Roxborough State Park, and other places that might have nesting cavities that can accommodate them too. Okay, the next one. Okay, the great horned owl. And the great horned owl has a really big range, especially in Colorado. They do like to have open space areas so that they can get their wings out, be able to fly down to the ground and get rodents, especially along creek sides. So in riparian areas, we know that riparian areas really, because of the water availability there, they attract a lot of rodents. So you'll have a lot of things for great horned owl to feed on, and they're also good for a lot of different kinds of snakes that are there, some lizards and rabbits. They, you know, it's a lush place, really full of a lot of prey animals. Out on a little bit more the eastern part of Colorado does accommodate a lot of great horned owls too, more than the western part of Colorado. Here we're showing, you know, to find them too, you might look under some of these trees, especially with the big branches hanging over that don't have a lot of little branches coming out from them. This gives them a good place to roost. They can fly up there and take their prey and eat it. When they're through eating it, they'll cough out their the debris that's left, and you will find those little packets of their bones and leftover hair at the base of some of these trees. So that's a good indicator that the great horned owls are around. Looking for them, especially at just a little after the sun sets. It's a good time to go out and listen for owls. And as far as the great horned owls hooting, you'll hear them pretty much any time of the year. A lot of people think it's just during mating time, but you know, I've heard them, you know, all throughout the summer, in the fall, in the winter, in the spring. So the hooting continues on. And so luckily we had a good chance to hear the hooting already tonight. I do have some calls. I don't want to disturb the owls that are live that might be listening to, but if anybody's interested, we could hear some. Audubon offers a good app so that you can hear the owls and hear the different sounds and look at their forms and learn a lot about the owls. So we could maybe share some of that information about where to go to get more information about the birds while you're in the field. We want to be careful not to call out the sounds too much because it can be unnerving for the owls to keep hearing a sound that sounds like them, and they keep responding back. If you are using them, and if you do get a call back, try not to keep using it because it will disturb them. Okay, and is that the last one, Amy? I think it is.
It is. That was your last. That was your last owl. This is your last slide.
Okay, and yeah, and this is not a picture of Kurt Frankenfeld. This is a picture of an owl that he took. So I just wanted to make sure that that's clear. I know he's listening tonight. So
Sky, could you hop on really quickly and tell us if you're okay if we play some calls? Are your critters okay with that?
Yeah, you can play calls.
okay,
I'm gonna let you do that.
all right. And okay, so go ahead and show one of the pictures, and then we'll go. Amy, if you want to put that back up again, put the screen up, and then we'll play a call from that animal, that owl. I don't know why some of our pictures are real. Okay, the saw-whet. Okay. Okay, here's the northern saw-whet owl. And okay, here we go with its toots. Okay, and here's another sound. Okay, the northern saw-whet owl. Okay, what else do we have here? Okay, the barn owl. I don't think we heard much from the barn owl, did we?
I mean, he made noise on my side, but I don't know how that comes through on the video and sound. So I don't know.
Okay, let's try this. He might respond back to us. Okay.
Is that a barred owl sound, not barn owl?
It was barred. I'm sorry. It should have been a barn owl. That was a barred owl. Thank you. Oh, you know what? It's in a different area. Okay, here's the barn owl. Sorry. It's in a totally different family. Okay. Okay. Just a kind of a light scream. They can get more heavy with their screams. Oh, here's the hiss. I think we could hear your owl hissing.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay. Yeah, I think when you were taking him out at first, it was hissing like that. Okay. And okay, the burrowing owl. Okay, here we go. And I don't think I've ever heard, that I know of, heard a burrowing owl. So it's kind of an ooh, 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 ooh. And we'll listen to some others. They have a, thought I was going to get that. This is the burrowing owl. You know, if you heard that chattering kind of noise, and if you're out in a prairie dog field, I don't know if I would pick up that would be an owl sound. So to learn these from some of these apps would be good, because this would be a daytime sound that you would hear of that burrowing owl. So it does sound a lot different than what you would expect of an owl. And this is a burrowing owl too. It's two of them. Okay, burrowing owl. All right, do we have another? Or the great horned. And I think this will go down to the great horned. It is. And this one, it's easy for me to just go out the back door and talk to the owls at night. I hear quite a few of great horned owls. I know I've been hearing them out the windows before, and you know, if I hoot out there, I might have an owl by my window all night long trying to get my attention. So beware of what you call in. And when my son was really little, he had a little tape recorder. It was a Mickey Mouse tape recorder, and he took it outside. And I had just come from a presentation in Steamboat Springs at the library. And I gave him that little tape that they gave me, and we put it in his Mickey Mouse tape recorder. He went out, he was just about 2 years old then. He took it outside and came back in and said, "Mommy, hoo, 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 hoo." And I said, "Yep, that's the sound that the owl makes." And he grabbed my hand, he goes, "Mommy," and he took me outside. He had called in an owl on his Mickey Mouse tape recorder at 2 years old. So anyway, they're widespread, these owls, and you know, a lot of times on a night, especially a summer night, go out and listen to the owls and listen to them calling each other back and forth, and that's always fun to hear. Okay, should we go to questions, Amy?
Let's do. All right. I'm gonna put both of you on the screen. Let's see if I'm doing it right. So that, yeah. Okay, everybody can see you as you answer our questions. I'm just gonna go in order that they were submitted. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Yep.
All right. How old do great horned owls live? And I guess maybe, Jackie, you can talk about in the wild, and Sky, maybe you can tell us about in captivity.
Yeah, in captivity, we can more than double most birds' lifespans. And so our birds can live to be 20 to 30 years old. And so I know Jackie will probably talk a little bit on wild, but usually about 10 years for wild great horns, which is why we can get 20 to 30 in captivity for our guys.
And I think, you know, for some of the adults, I think they can keep coming back. Well, their territories are pretty much in one area, so they don't necessarily have to migrate. So sometimes they can be there year round, year after year. And I don't know what the average age would be, but I'm sure it's way down. It's probably, you know, probably not a lot of them even survive to become adults. And once they become adults, then for great horned owls, especially eating rodents, they'll probably pick up a lot of pesticides too. Luckily, their food sources are a little bit more widespread and not just the rodents in the houses. So yeah, I don't have a good number on that. It's a lot easier to keep track if you do have you know, a caged owl, one that's in that's with people all the time, so they can keep track. Otherwise, you know, doing bird counts and then finding out, you know, how many, you know, it's, unless you have them tagged and are going and looking at them again and again, it's difficult to find out if it's the same owl or not.
Mm-hmm. And to touch on that too, you know, you were mentioning low mortality or high mortality rates for like young birds. Only about 80 to 90% of individuals that are hatched each year actually make it to adulthood. So if a bird makes it past that first year, then they can live 10 to 15 years if they're lucky. But you know, these guys are dealing with a lot of human caused problems. Working in a rehab facility, we get the opportunity to do different research bases. So we get to say, you know, how many owls came in this year and from what causes. We get a lot of vehicle strikes, especially for owls.
Yes.
And a lot of that is linked to throwing trash out the car or biodegradable items out of the car. So things like banana peels, apple cores, burger buns. It attracts prey to the side of the road where these birds end up getting hit by vehicles. And so that was one of our #1 admits for last year, was being struck by vehicles or window strikes as well.
Yes, and also power poles. And, you know, they're getting better and better. I just had a transformer replaced up on my power pole just a couple of days ago. And I asked the guy, I said, you know, is there anything that you did to make it better for the owl? I said, I always have an owl sitting up there on that pole. And he said, yes. He says, I put some insulators, and he showed me, pointed up and showed me the insulators that he put up that come really closest to the wire that's closest to the actual wooden pole. And so they are making efforts to make it a lot more safe for birds because they know that birds are going to be using these perches. And I worked at Denver Botanic Gardens at Chatfield for 3 years, and out there we had old power poles, and the great horned owls, especially because of their wingspans, they could touch different parts of the wires, and that could conduct electricity through their bodies. And we had several die off, and so we contacted Fish and Wildlife Service, and they contacted the electric company and had them alter those posts. So that would help with the longevity if we can get those old posts taken care of. Okay.
Sky, here's another one for you. You can answer this quickly, because would you say that all the owls that you showed us tonight kind of double their lifespan in captivity, or do the other ones you showed us earlier have a different lifespan in captivity?
I'd say it's either, I guess, for like really small owls, like if I'd have shown you our screech owl or our saw-whet owl, it's more than double, because those birds typically only live about a year or 2 in the wild, 3 if they're lucky. But currently we've got a saw-whet owl who's over 6 years, and we had a couple. There's one screech owl I know at a facility I started at who's going into its late teens, and so if that owl would have only lived 3 years in the wild, being in late teens is more than double. So for our little guys, a lot more, but for our big guys, it's about double.
All right. How many owl species are in Colorado? Either of you?
I don't remember the official count. I always tell people more than 10 because there's tons of little ones. I don't know if Jackie has a better answer.
Yeah, I'd have to do a count. But we have the Colorado Bird Atlas. And so that would probably be our best source. That atlas is redone about every 20 years. And they have people from all parts of the state do their bird counts and keep track and submit the information that they found. And that will tell you what's been seen and recorded. And if we, say what kind of owls, are those the ones that actually raise their young here in Colorado? Or occasionally, we'll get those owls from the north that tend to visit and won't necessarily nest here, but we'll see them at different times of the year. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So yeah, we could look that up in the app and let you know.
Yeah, I could let you guys know tomorrow. Also, there are quite a few bird experts on this presentation this evening. So if somebody is on and they happen to know, type it in chat and I'll be there. We hear 2 owls hooting with a call and response around our house at night. What does that mean?
You hear them tooting with a response?
There's a call and response, so they know that there's 2 great owls. What is that communication about?
It could be their territory. It could be territorial, or it could be mates talking to each other. So, that's about,
Are they keeping track of each other? Are they sharing information on hunting? What do you think?
I don't know if it would be
experience. From what I
hunting.
heard from Devin, a lot of it is like mated pairs keeping track of each other. So like when a great horned owl specifically hoots, they have that white patch on their throat, and they can use that to kind of shine and sometimes give position away. And so usually from what I've heard, it's mated pairs kind of keeping track on where they are.
And so sometimes I've heard even more join the chorus. So I don't know if it would be some of their offspring too, but they were all hooting. They were all hoots, so that would show that it would be more of an adult. So adult to adult, their vocalization is different when they are younger. So it could be, partially territorial too. So
we're at 8 right now, but if you guys can stick around for a couple more questions, would that be okay?
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right.
Sure.
What is the typical habitat for the barn and great horned owls? And how can we help to improve habitat for local owls?
Okay. For those owls, I would say the one that needs probably the most help would be the barn owl. If you do put up some sort of, like, let's say in your barn, if you were to put up some sort of a support for them to lay their eggs on to nest on, maybe they like materials that would be like hay. You could get that. Make sure that it's not accessible for any raccoons coming in or any other types of predators. And let's see. Oh, and make sure there's no rodenticide around too. So they like cover. The barn owls do. They like cover. They like to be up and away from other animals, and they need a way to get in and out of their building too.
And for barn owls, you can sometimes make nest boxes,
Mhm.
and that
Yeah.
helps too if you put them in appropriate places. And you can put up like platforms for great horned owls, but they really don't need it because great horned owls are predating on every other species of owl in Colorado. They are very abundant in population, so we need to focus on helping. We need to focus on both of them, obviously, but in order to increase the barn owls population, we need to focus on them in order to help them. And similar for a lot of our smaller species as well. Great horned owls are doing fantastic, but barn owls are declining.
Yeah, and great horned owls, they don't make their own nest. They'll take over a nest. They'll come in early. They'll take over a nest of, say, like a crow or a raven, or just be up
Red
on
tails.
a place. Yeah, yeah. So they can do fine, but the barn owls definitely could use some help, and more of an enclosed box rather than the great horned owls that has more of an open type of a nesting area.
Okay, I think you just answered this, but if you want to add any more details, would great horned owls use any kind of a man-made nest, like you said, like a platform or something? Would they do that?
Yeah, they'll use anything. I've
Okay.
seen great horned owls nest on like old red-tailed nests that are built in billboards or anywhere they find that can be suitable for them.
Okay. In response to the how many species of owls live in Colorado, Kurt Frankenfeld is on our call this evening as an attendee. Is also on the board of Denver Audubon, and he looked up and said that the Colorado Breeding Bird Atlas lists 9 owls that breed in Colorado, but that there are others that pass through or visit, such as the snowy owl.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you, Kurt.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so somebody else wants to know, I love this question. Do owls in captivity respond to feeding time, kind of like Pavlov's bell?
I mean, kind of. I mean, for our organization, we feed all of our birds at the same time when we do feeding time for everyone, and our owls don't particularly care if they're eating at 12 o'clock in the day, or if I don't get to food prep till like 5 in the afternoon. And so I think they take it more as like the situation around them and what they notice. So like, am I pulling out food because they can see us where we do our food prep and everything. And some birds, they do kind of get like a time clock, like when we're in different seasons where we're very consistently feeding at a time, but they don't particularly care one way or another. And in the wild, they're kind of just sitting and waiting and having an opportunity to hunt whenever it arises. So even in the wild, they're not like, oh, it's dinner time right now. And so they kind of do, but they kind of don't, if that makes sense.
All right. Another question. Somebody wants to tell a story. They have a nest of great horned owls near them, and a baby fell out. More than one, the babies all fell out, and they walked back up the tree trunk with their claws only. Is that a normal behavior?
Yes, and so that's where we go back to when I kind of mentioned, baby owls ending up on the ground and being able to get back up. They do have ability to get back up in the tree. They just need the adults to kind of say, hey, where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? And so that's why if you see an owl on the ground, it's not always a bad sign. It's usually either they're learning to fly, they did fall out of the nest, but they're able to get back up. Usually what I tell people is, if it's a puffball baby and doesn't have any of those like flight feathers, then it's not supposed to be out of the nest and needs help. But if it's starting to kind of grow those flight feathers, perfectly fine, probably just learning how to do its stuff. Usually.
Do the birds in captivity at Nature's Educators Sky, do they get to fly at all?
Any of our birds that are physically able to fly and mentally able to fly are flown. And so all three of the owls I showed you today are actually a part of our flight program. But we do have some birds who either physically can't because they are with us because they broke a wing or they're missing an eye. As you guys mentioned, you've seen our saw-whet before. She is a one-eyed owl and she also has wing deformities. And so she cannot fly. So it would be unfair of us to try and ask her to do that if she physically can't. But any of the ones that can fly, they are trained in our flight show. If you guys ever want to see that, we do that in the summer at the Royal Gorge down in Canyon City all summer. So you have the opportunity to see most of our birds fly there.
All right, thank you. 4 more questions real quick. Will great horned owls return to the same nest year after year?
Yeah.
Usually.
Yeah, a lot of them do. And sometimes it depends on who gets to the nest first and can use it. But they'll move around from time to time. But it's possible that they could. They're not quite like eagles that can go ahead and make their nest better and better each year. With a great horned owl, they're not going to patch the bad parts. So maybe it'd be better if a hawk took over a year and fixed it up a little bit, and then the owl could come back to that spot or find another place that's a little bit better. But they're not caretakers of the nest. They won't improve it. It just might deteriorate, and it might be time for them to go and rob somebody else's nest next year.
A question about the saw-whet. First of all, wasn't it a saw-whet that was in the Rockefeller Christmas tree? I thought so. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was was that last year that they cut it down and they found that little guy?
Yeah. I think it was a year
maybe
ago.
2 years ago.
It was not too long ago, about a year ago. Yeah.
Someone says saw-whet is a strange name. Do you know where it came from?
Oh, I did know. Just a minute. Yeah, we can look that up. That's one to look up. But yeah, there is an answer to that, and we just have to look that up. Probably somebody has the answer right now.
That's all right. I'll reach back out to everybody with that answer tomorrow. And all right, real quick, how often do great horned owls eat, and how much?
For our captive birds, we feed them, a designated amount that's, for them. We don't want them to get too fat or too skinny. So our owl is about like a leg of a rabbit a day, if that makes sense. And then in the wild, it's basically as opportunity presents themselves, and especially in breeding season, they're going to go after anything that they can grab to bring back to the nest to feed to the babies. But typically they might eat like a very large meal one day and not eat the next day. They'll kind of wait until they need to, or if the opportunity presents themselves. I don't know if Jackie has more info there too.
Well, yeah, and it depends on the time of the year too. Sometimes if a great horned owl is looking for food in the winter time and the snow has iced over, they're not able to break that surface very well. They might be able to hear little rodents underneath the ice, but they can't break through well enough to get them. So there might be some lean times during the year where they won't be eating as much as other times when the that layer under the snow is softer and they're able to go and get prey. So yeah, they might have lean times of the year and really good times of the year, so when, you know, when everything is bountiful or not much out there.
Okay. I'm going to ask this last question as we close, but I want to say that a lot of people have been popping up saying thank you to both of you. I want to say thank you to both of you too. I also want to say thank you to Sarah Corliss, who's also on staff at Douglas Land Conservancy. Thanks for being there with us, Sarah, tonight. I'm going to send out a little follow-up tomorrow. Any feedback you might have, any other answers to some of these questions, I'll share with you, but I'm also going to share the link to donate. We appreciate any donations so that we can continue to hold events such as this for the public. And Sky Works for Nature's Educators, which is also a nonprofit. I'm sure that they would love some donations as well. So I'll put the link in case you're inclined to donate to them as well. And Sky, as we head out, this is a perfect answer or question to close with. Can you tell a little bit more about Nature's Educators and the types of animals that you might take at your facility?
Yeah. So on the rehab side of things, we focus almost exclusively on birds and as much as we can on raptors, but we will take and help with songbirds like blue jays, tanagers, any of those kinds of guys, and occasionally things like waterfowl or water birds. So one of the first birds I got to work with that wasn't a raptor on our rehab side of things was a great blue heron. And on that note, I'm not the rehabber, I just help her occasionally. Our rehabber is Emily Davenport, and so I just kind of help with different things. So on that side, almost any bird we can help you with, or phone call wise, we can help with mammals, kind of direct you into the right place that you need to go to, or help evaluate a situation if it's needed. On the education side of things, we have two locations, one up in Sedalia, Colorado in Douglas County, and one down here where I'm at right now, Florence, Colorado. And we've got a nature center down here in Florence that has reptiles and chinchillas on display, so snakes, toads, and a couple arachnids as well. And then we care for a variety of raptors, including hawks, falcons, owls, eagles, and vultures. And then we have other birds in our program like parrots, pigeons. We have a cute little chucker, which is a type of bird you can hunt, but is native to kind of the Middle Eastern area. So we have tons we can offer across the whole board.
Thank you. All right. Thank you all so much. Jackie, you want to say anything else?
Well, I just hope you can get out and enjoy some of our open space properties, and maybe the properties close at an hour after sunset. So maybe during that time, you might be able to see some of the owls out hunting, and so get out there in some of those times, and even just going along a road and looking at the power lines, you might see some of the owls up there perching, getting ready to hunt. And also I have an intern that's helping right now, and she helped get some information together today, and her name is Abby Sims. So I wanted to thank her for the work that she did too. And also we enjoy working with our partners, say like Nature's Educators, and also Douglas Land Conservancy. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having us as well.
It was great. Thank you all for attending. And I will have the recording shared tomorrow. Take care.
All right, bye-bye.